So, good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us for another European Specialty Tea Association webinar to learn, connect, and inspire tea professionals everywhere. My name is Bernadine Tay, and today I'm excited to introduce our speakers and first producer member speakers, Alexander Kay, owner of Satemwa Estates based in Shire Highlands, in Malawi, and they're established in 1923. And as many of you know, the European Specialty Tea Association, pardon me, have extended our membership to supporting tea producers all around the world. And as we champion, as we're champions of specialty tea, we believe producers have the power to shape the landscape of tea enjoyment. Now, Satemwa Estates have been producing teas for so many decades and have been more well known for CTC up until now. They're committed to crafting artisanal specialty tea, some including a very unique lineup of green, white, oolong, black, and dark teas. Now, just a little heads up, because Alex is joining us from Malawi, in the highlands of Malawi, and sometimes the connection isn't very stable. But have no fear. We have Walter Verlas, based in Antwerp, Belgium, where the connection is just a little bit more stable. And if you have any questions, please put it in our Q&A later, but I meant to say that he will be continuing for Alex if this should happen. So just sit back, relax, sip your tea, and if you have any questions after 35 to 40 minutes, you will be able to ask them in our Q&A box, and we'll try and address as much as we can. Now, we're recording, so don't worry, we will send you the recording when we're all done. So if you don't get your questions in on time, have no fear. All right, so Alex, if I hand it over to you.
Thanks very much. Yeah, and thanks for joining this evening. I just wanted to, this evening, I'm just going to give a little bit of history, very short history on Malawi tea, Satemwa's story, and then dwell a little bit on what the differences between commodity and specialty as we see them, and what specialty means to us, how we make different changes in the process in order to ensure that we produce a specialty tea. And then just to try and give some insights into why, why we're interested in making specialty. So there's sort of different drivers of that. And then some of the lessons learned along our journey, and sort of our ideas for the futures. Just to talk about this slide quickly. I'm sure a lot of you have seen a similar photo or made one yourself, but what we're very proud of is that all these teas are made on Satemwa. So we've got, as Bernadine said, we've got black teas, which has been our staple for so many years. Now we're making green, white, oolong, and even a dark post-fermented tea, which we're particularly proud of. So Malawi, I just put this slide just to show everyone where it is. The first tea seed arrived through the missionaries in the 1860s. And Malawi is actually the oldest commercial producer of tea, and it was started growing commercially in about 1889. And it was a similar story to Sri Lanka, where Malawi was growing a lot of coffee at that time, and rust came in, and the planters were looking for new crops. And so this planter recognized tea and took it and started developing it. So it was a very sort of ad hoc development, if you like, and there's some interesting stories in the historical record about just how awful some of that early tea was, as people were just, trying to make it without any prior knowledge. Yeah, so just moving on to Satemwa. I mean, we started in 1923. Originally, Satemwa was supplying green leaf to a factory in the district, and we built our factory in 1938. Originally, that would have been an orthodox factory producing black tea destined for, the UK market, as was sort of the general setup in that time. That orthodox production continued really until the late 60s, when, with the advent of tea bags, there was a more trend, the demand for different smaller grades increased. So for fannings and dust grades, and really that's when the CTC technology came in, or CTC type, because we didn't use some CTC in Malawi. But certainly by the mid-70s, all the orthodox production was gone from Malawi. And and that's gone up to today, when Malawi is basically more than 99% CTC. We started sort of rediscovering orthodox production in the early 2000s and brought in some small batch rollers in about 2007. And we also produce a bit of green CTC. This photo is quite interesting. There's Malanje Mountain in the background. That's where the original tea was grown, and is the sort of center of the tea research in Malawi, which we'll talk about a bit later. I mean, one of the interesting sort of characteristics of Malawi, because we started commercial production so early, is we have a lot of China type seedling varieties, and over 50% of our plantings are still seed. So that's sort of a specific characteristic, and brings, while it has its limitations, it also brings a lot of opportunities in terms of the amount of germplasm we have available to us, which becomes really exciting when you start talking about in the specialty scene. So that's why I wanted to talk a bit about commodity versus specialty. Actually, one of the things I wanted to say, you can see we're quite high here, and Satemwa lies actually right on, so to the east of this picture is the edge of the Great East African Rift. So it drops from about 1,200 meters, where this photo is taken, to about 80 meters above sea level in a very, very short distance. You've got this big escarpment. So here we're looking south. For us, what defines a specialty tea is really where it was made, how it was made, and who made it. So to answer the where it was made, that's really where we're really looking at the terroir of this. So the particular soil conditions, the aspect, you can see we're actually looking, south in this photo. So these are west-facing slopes, so they get a lot of shade. Was I muted there? I think, yeah. Sorry about that. So I don't know where I left off, but Yeah, so with the large volume CTC, we're really trying to optimize logistics. So pluck large volumes every day, get the transport into the factory. Obviously, we're trying to optimize conditions in the factory, but we're really focused on getting a general wither right, and then processing. And during that process, there are, of course, variables that we're trying to control, but ultimately, we're trying to produce a large amount of consistent product as cheaply as possible. And that's really the big difference with how we look at specialty tea, where we're really putting in specific trained pluckers that are plucking specific parts of the leaf. So it might be a needle, might be one and about different qualities of pluck that we've identified for the particular season. So during different seasons, we're trying to make different teas according to the potential of the cultivars we have. And that even within a season, it can change from one week to another, depending on if we've had a lot of rainfall or particularly a lot of sunshine. Whereas again, on the sort of commodity side, we're really making one type of tea day in and day out. How I also try and explain the differences is to use the analogy of having a leaf sitting in the field as having 100% potential value, and that potential is really defined by the terroir and the cultivar, and that all the decisions we make are usually are quite often reducing the potential of that leaf. And in specialty production, we're trying to keep that as close to 100% as possible. So I'll just try and show in the next couple of slides a few. This is a short video just showing shear plucking, just to give you an idea of this sort of scale and speed of plucking in a sort of commodity operation. This is more selective plucking. This is hand plucking, where the ladies here are selecting specific pluck for a specialty process. This is just showing, the post-harvest handling, which is so important. Here we're taking really small amounts of leaf, trying to make sure that they keep that, that 100% potential that's there in the field before we pluck it, and make sure that potential is retained all the way through into the factory. Of course, specialty is really defined to us by sort of small batch processes, a lot of attention to detail. So each batch is really being treated slightly differently. Small decisions are being made right throughout the process to try and enhance all the different characteristics of the leaf style, and so the visual characteristics, as well as the olfactory characteristics that will be there when the tea is tasted. So here I just want to talk about some of the reasons we're trying to move away from commodity tea. The first reason really is the economics of the CTC tea for us in Malawi. I mean, Satemwa is a small company relatively in the CTC business. So we fit in an uncomfortable position where we don't have the economies of scale of some of the larger people involved in the tea business. And so we're always struggling to be competitive on price. This just shows the Malawi, so the Limbi auction is in Malawi, Mombasa is obviously in Kenya. And this shows the sort of discount that Malawi teas have against the main Kenyan teas. Of course, there are other teas sold in the Mombasa auction other than Kenyan teas, but it just gives an idea. And that discount is there for a number of reasons. One, Malawi is landlocked, so it has extra costs in getting it to the port. The other is time. It takes relatively much longer to get our products to the market, which is obviously a cost. And one of the other reasons is, of course, quality. The better Malawi teas are similar to what's the west of Rift Kenyan teas. But, and also in Malawi, we have a lot of seasonality. So we have a long period of time when we don't have much tea available, almost 6 months of the year. And that affects certain aspects of quality like leaf appearance. This just very briefly shows the growth in Kenya volumes over the last 20 years. And you can see Malawi hasn't really changed much at all. That's again due to a number of reasons. But one of the challenges is the economics of tea production in Malawi. I'll show a few slides later on about that, but we also have challenging business environment. We have, at the moment, actually, we're having power cuts every day. So we need to invest in power, backup gen sets. We also have very high inflation rates. So just the last 3 years, we've had to, our power and other costs have gone up by over 40% in that period, while the exchange rate has remained stable. And this slide just shows very quickly how production is diverging away from consumption in the last 10 years or so, leading to obviously an oversupply of tea in the market, and that's really affecting our business. The slide just showing some tea being packed at Satemwa factory, the CTC teas. It's just showing a sort of size of gen set that we need to run the factory when we can't get mains power. Another reason that we're interested in looking at other opportunities in the tea industry is climate change. We're really feeling the effects of drought. The last 10 years or so, droughts are very frequent. And really what that does to us is it reduces our productivity and reduces our growing windows getting narrower and narrower and affecting our yields. But it does lead to some interesting opportunities, because when teas are stressed for various reasons, it could be light stress or drought, shade, they tend to, some of the reaction to that produces compounds that enhance the flavor of the teas. So in this drought is some opportunity for us in terms of producing some interesting characteristics. This line's quite interesting. It just shows where there's a soil change. this where the bushes have lost all their leaves, the soils are silty and can't hold water through the dry season, whereas the soils on the slopes have higher clay content. The other reason we're sort of interested in specialty tea really is our passion for tea crafting. When we first heard about making white teas, when we first heard about white tea, we had no idea what that was, and it came as quite a shock really to us that thought we knew lots about tea, to realize there's a whole world of teas that actually we had no idea about. And but it stimulated some interest. My father was the first one to try and make some, and he had these little buds in his office on his tea saucer. Actually, he used to take it in and out of the sun and play around, and ended up making some interesting teas, and we really just took it from there. But we had the opportunity to really not be limited, I think, by previous tradition, and that's enabled us to really try all sorts of different things. At one point, we were breaking down a leaf and tasting each little bit of the leaf, of say, a 3-leaf in a bud. We're obviously drinking the tip, the top leaf, even the nodes, the individual nodes, where a new bud would break out. We're tasting those separately, just to try and understand where different flavors are coming from, doing this with different varieties. And that's really informed where we are today. As you can see, this, specialty tea, one of the reasons, I think I'm going to talk about that a bit later, but one of the reasons it's also really important to us is the role it can play in terms of community. Yes, I do talk about that later, but what we find now is that it really gives us an opportunity to keep, we feel that to provide jobs. One of the challenges in CTC is really the focus now is more and more on productivity, and investments are in mechanization. And while that's all well and good for us, it doesn't really suit where we see our role in the community is, which is two very important things. One is providing jobs, and the second, of course, is providing decent work along with those jobs. And specialty tea really allows people, I think, to improve their skills a lot and improve their value. So that's an important thing for us. So I'm jumping around a bit, just to go to the top of this slide. Some of the opportunities for specialty tea in our context are the old varieties I talked about earlier, and the new cultivars that are bred at the Tea Research Foundation in Malawi. And we found that there's some real novel flavor profiles that we've been able to get that we haven't found. Not that we drink a lot of tea from around the world, actually we have very limited experience in terms of exposure to tasting different origins. But we found some really interesting flavors that we believe are quite exciting and show a lot of opportunity. We've also, I mentioned earlier, we've got a lot of old bushes. And in China, you know, tea from old bushes comes at a premium. You know, they recognize that as having certain quality profiles. We have low pest pressure in Malawi, as in a lot of Africa. Main reason being that we haven't had that you know, millennia of pest and disease development along with the tea bush. It's relatively new to this part of the world, and so we haven't had time really for pest and disease to build up. One of the things we've been working on is the opportunities within the seasonality. We have our first flush in September in the Southern Hemisphere, and we see that as an interesting opportunity, being very close to Christmas, and again producing some really quite floral flavors that are not normally associated with Malawi teas. And we also, we have a previous history of making orthodox tea, so that kind of interest and there's still, and some experience is still there. These are just some slides showing, this is a nursery, this is some of the varieties that we get from the Tea Research Foundation in Malawi. This, of course, is very important in the specialty tea, knowing exactly which varieties are in which field, and taking that through the process, being able to treat different leaf differently according to different recipes that we've developed. This is our oldest field, actually. Variety is called local. That's really what we call the China type seedling varieties here. These types of this type of seed is actually being largely pulled out in Malawi over the last 20, 30 years because it doesn't make a great black CDC. It's kind of rather thin and characterless. In a different way.
7 minutes, Alex.
We can make, okay, thanks. We can make fantastic oolong from this tea. So it's actually one of our most valuable fields. Whereas prior to us going on the specialty journey, we had only kept it for its historical value. Otherwise, these are the kind of fields that have got replanted. This is just a photo showing our old orthodox factory. So that's obviously, that was all changed in the 70s to CDC. And then the newer orthodox rollers are the ones you saw earlier, much more small batch type. Yeah, this is just a few slides showing some of the different employment opportunities. I'll just put this one in, just showing the sort of developmental role that a company like Satemwa plays in the rural communities, where there are very few formal jobs available, and that's where we see an important role with ideas like gender management is really important for us, and it helps to bring these ideas into the community. So this is just one of the things I wanted to share. Yeah, so just a story so far. We started in 2003 with the Orthodox revival. lots of experiments. We diversified into herbs, mainly with smallholders in 2014. This really helps. The herbs tend to do very well in the dry season when you don't have much tea around. So it really helps with the cash flow of smaller farmers. 2015, we set up a direct trade office in Europe. You know, it's been one of our biggest challenges really has been in terms of trying to make people aware of our teas. You know, when you think of Darjeeling teas, everyone's immediately taken to a place. They know roughly what you're talking about. When you talk of Malawi teas, first of all, people don't really know where Malawi is very often. And then if they've heard of Malawi tea, they might, you know, think of it as a tea for blending or a tea for, you know, not necessarily a standalone tea. So we're really having to do a lot of work to try and, you know, change perceptions about what's possible here. And this is one of our flagship products, the Satemwa antlers, which we developed quite early on in our trials. Unusual looking tea, and yeah, full of flavor, and we're really proud of that one. That's Custom, one of our main tea makers. These are some of the herbs that we're growing: them verbena, mint. There's a lady harvesting hibiscus, calyxes. This is grown by smallholders. Yes, hibiscus. Yeah, so just to try and go through some of the lessons learned, we've had a lot of benefits of collaborations. For example, the dark tea, we worked with a Japanese guy who helped us really to develop that tea. We've had great collaborations with buyers, some of our buyers who recognized early on and really supported us, and that gave us a lot of confidence to carry on. Companies like the Rare Tea Company and how they've really deepened their relationship with us. They now work with us to help provide bursaries for. At Satemwa, we have a lot of big bursary program for primary and secondary education, but we've never had one for tertiary. And the Rare Tea Company have set up a foundation that takes on some of the students that we have in our program, and have now expanded it to identify others, but really providing great opportunities for people coming from the tea communities. We've grown organically. You know, I think what I alluded to earlier on about really having to develop a market. If we had borrowed money and spent too much on it, I think we would have struggled to sell our tea initially, simply because we couldn't find a market. And also, we didn't really know how to make it. So we've had to make it. We've had to test products and then find markets for it. We've had a lot of duds. We've had some teas that we think are great and amazing, but we haven't necessarily found a market for them. So it's been a slow but steady process. So we're diversifying through quality production. So we're really trying to focus on quality, small batches, specialty tea. We're also looking at value adding at origin as a means of trying to retain more value in here at origin. So that can just be small things like putting the tea in pouches, different weights for customers, and all through to the final packaging retail ready. Although we have our sort of flagship products, if you like the antlers, we still need volumes of mainstreamed orthodox to make the numbers work. So we really need a wide range of different teas. We found that helps us to keep busy. And also it works with the model because there's opportunities all the year through to make different types of tea. And because of the seasonality, we get a lot of tea at certain times, and we can't always make that into specialty teas, of course. And that's really where it complements well with CTC, because we're able to put large volumes through the CTC factory at that time. And we've been fortunate enough to have a healthy business to support diversification. Of course, as we've seen from the economics of it, that's changing now. The next steps that we envisage are really getting ISO and HACCP certification, which will help support, value addition at origin and give confidence to buyers in more sophisticated markets that the finished product is of acceptable standard for retail and so on. We're also looking at organic production. We do currently use a lot of organic techniques like compost teas. When we plant, we do use a lot of compost. So we're starting to try and sort of formalize that. Setting up more transparent and traceable direct trade relations with our partners. I mean, this is really the key to making this successful. We need to have reliable partners who are really invested in our story, invested in our products, and we can really develop together. That's one of the, and we do have some CTC customers that are sort of heavily invested in us, but we really struggle with the bulk of the business, where every year you're trying to take teas into the market and don't have these strong linkages. And then, finally, I think is really trying to find, we do have a small venture with smallholders in terms of trying to make some of their teas into specialty products and really linking them with the market. And that's obviously going to be a big part of the future. And we've really got to find new models of working to ensure that there's equitable value throughout the chain distributed. And I think that's it for now.
Alex, thank you so much for that. You cannot imagine how many questions you have that coming in thick and fast, and you've got a lot of good comments from the chat. I just have to say, Roberta says that your pictures makes her feel homesick. So, really, really fantastic. Well done. I just have to highlight already you've received some collaboration opportunities. Kenna Mahonda from the Malawi High Commission in London says that she's keen to assist in the awareness of the tea. We can hold tea tasting functions in our boardroom. We now have an honorary council in Ireland whom we can task to assist in awareness. So that's absolutely fantastic. Thank you very much, Kenna. This is exactly what we hope to get people collaborating and spread more of the news. Absolutely love your stories. I have questions too, but I'll put those aside because there's so many questions for you to tackle today. So I'm going to start asking the ones that I can see on the chat. Maria says, The oldest bushes, those from 1926 used for oolong, are they still the original bushes, or have those fields been replanted over the years?
No, those are the original bushes in that field. That's right. So, yeah, so that makes it, yeah, quite special because, as I was saying, we were originally, throw back 20 years, and we thought that those bushes, had limited value to us. We couldn't make a nice CDC out of them, and through the fields replanting them, and through just opening our mind to new production techniques, we've been able to, just really, as I said, it's one of our most valuable fields now. It's our oldest field.
And you were telling me that the yield from them is quite large, isn't it, from the older bushes?
Yeah, the yield is still very good. Yeah, it is. It's actually, we monitor averages and all this kind of thing, and it's quite well above our average.
Fantastic. Okay, so Martin also asks, is the whole production of specialty tea at Satemwa the result of natural farming?
As in sort of organic farming or that kind of thing. So no, I mean we're not organic certified. We do use fertilizers. So no, we're not organically certified at the moment.
But we are working on an organic project, as Alexander indicated, and of course that needs transition, and we will start on a small scale. Also working with an NGO, United Nations funded project that is recycling compost from markets, vegetable markets around Satemwa, and we are doing some experiments there to see the quality of the compost and also the effects on our plants. So we are working on an organic transition because the market is definitely there, and we strongly believe in that. But it's we are going through a transition at the moment.
Fantastic. Okay, so this is a question from our president, actually Nigel Milligan, who's on the call. He says, given the ever-increasing cost of production and diminishing margins for commodity CTC tea making, what do you see as its future in, say, 10 or 20 years' time? And do you envisage it going towards making tea extracts and tea concentrates at source, all going to the wall?
Okay.
You want me to?
Yeah, I think there's a very certainly in our part of the world, a very homogeneous or very the model is very samey. I don't know if that's a good word to use, but there's not a lot of different models. I mean, what we're doing here is in terms of the specialty and orthodox, we're the only one in Malawi right now, and they're very few in the region. So the model, the CDC model, is pretty common. I think what will happen is there's going to be a breakup of or let's I don't know if that's the right way, a lot of new models being made. So I think the big CTC will always be there with it'll be, as I said, more investment in mechanization, be more and more mechanized from the plucking, fanning, processing, and I think that market will remain pretty steady. I think there are other opportunities for value addition at origin, certainly into ready to drink extracts, and I think we're probably, I don't know about on the cusp of it, but I imagine that, as you said, in that time frame, 10 to 20 years of different companies going different ways, because the pressure on price at the moment is just it's completely unsustainable.
Okay, I have a question from Kim Wong. He says, do you agree that specialty teas complement commodity teas? In other words, do they work together in the tea market?
In the market. Yes, I think so. I think, I think they do feed into each other. As you get better teas, just like in general in the food industry at the moment, there's a lot of interest in food. Specialty tea definitely fits into that, as I see it. And it allows people to trade up. People can't always afford maybe the fanciest teas, but they might want a better CTC tea, for example. And there are, but it's actually one thing I neglected to mention in my speech. I mean, I think there's still specialty CTC teas. They're just not, there are very few of them out there. But you can definitely make a specialty CTC tea. And, they have their own quality attributes, and they're, a lot cheaper than a lot of other teas. So I think there's definitely, one is a gateway to the other.
Okay.
We also think that, I mean, in CTC, in the black CTC market, there is definitely room for single origin teas, single estate teas. There is much more potential, we think, for teas with a story in the normal commodity black CTC market as well. And I think that answers questions from Mark, for example.
Yeah, and these can be,
for example, smallholder owned and grown tea could be a great story for markets in the US, markets in Russia, markets in Europe. So we think there is definitely potential there, and we are open to the big CTC buyers to discuss these kind of opportunities for black CTC tea. And on the back of that, we educate people, and they will start drinking specialty teas, hopefully. At one point. So
indeed, well answered. We're behind you on that.
And also, I think there's also, the sort of the functionality of the tea, which we haven't talked about. The sort of the polyphenol content or the theanine content of it, and really from coming from those characteristics coming from a particular cultivar. So I think there's also opportunities there for CTC.
When you mentioned cultivar, and you mentioned new types of cultivar that you have, and they having novel profiles. Can you tell us a little bit more about what novel profiles you were able to, say a highlight of that might be quite exciting you've come across?
Yeah, so probably the sort of flavor profile that I personally haven't tasted before is from teas outside of here are like a stone fruit. We get sort of apricot, lychee sort of characteristic coming out. Other flavor profiles we get are wintergreen, we get citrus, and some floral, bit of jasmine. Those are the sort of main ones. But I think the unique one, I think for us, is the sort of stone fruit.
Okay, thank you. This is a question from Eduardo. When we think of African teas, we usually think of productions all year long. Now, when you say the first flush happens in September, does that mean that previously the plant has been gone through dormancy?
Yeah, so I mean that's so we get a cool period from May to July, really, and this hopefully it's also cool and wet, which is why the tea grows in our particular area. But more often than not these days, it's cool and dry. But as it warms, so that's a period of very slow growth. It's not dormant as in the sense of like in Japan or Darjeeling, but it's a relative period, but it's a period of very slow growth. And as it warms up into conditions which are, there's still some moisture in the soil, but the ambient conditions are very warm, windy, and a lot of light intensity, no cloud. So very stressful conditions. And we find that, yeah, there's a lot of character in those at that time of the year. So that's what we call our first flush period. You know, traditionally here in Malawi, we would say our first flush is now when the main rains come, which is in November, December. But actually, there's this one in September which really has the quality attributes to it, and our main rains flush doesn't have much quality to it. Although we can make other different types of tea, then we can make a very nice green tea that time of the year.
So this leads very nicely to John Snell's question, because he says, given the climate change, are you looking at shade-grown tea to increase quality?
Yeah, we definitely look at shade, John. It's part of that organic model that we're looking at. You know, we'll do it in steps. We're not going to get too carried away, but definitely think it's part of the system, not only for shade, but really just as a general, you know, bringing agroforestry into tea. So in terms of soil improvement and its role in the nitrogen cycle and things like that. But again, if we get sort of west-facing slopes, we would look at it a bit differently to say we've got east-facing, more exposed areas. Yeah, a mix.
Alex, I'm just going to hand you over to our Executive Director, David Veal, who's on our panel today, and he has some questions for you. So David, please go ahead.
Okay, thank you. Yes, just a couple that I picked up on Alex. The first question only has 9 words in it, but it's a big question. And it's come from Lara Donners, who says, how can we follow Satemwa's journey into the future? If you'd answer that within the next hour, that would be great.
You can surf to the website, satemwa.com, and follow us on social media. And you can always drop me an email, Lara, if that can help. And the rest as well, of course.
Yeah, but I think, you know, I think that's quite what we find is obviously, you know, we've talked about telling stories and things like that. And I think that, you know, that it's really critical in what we found in trying to sell specialty tea is really, and of course, you know, the age that we sit in now, you know, so an event like this, you know, it's much easier to bring people closer to what's going on, how these teas are made, how people live, how it all goes on. And I think, you know, that's something that we've done a little bit of work on, trying to produce little videos and things like that. And that's something we need to do more of.
Telling the story. Yeah, that's amazing. Sorry.
In the suggestion we got on ambassador programs, we have seen that we have organized a few Malawi tea study tours for tea lovers and tea professionals from Belgium, the Netherlands, France, And by bringing them to Satemwa and by showing them around, and we do not go in one line in the tea fields. People can walk basically all over. They can look and watch and see and feel and talk to the people. We think that transparency is very important. So once this whole situation settles a bit, we definitely want to resume that. And for example, this kind of ambassador and internship programs on Satemwa could be definitely something to think of, because it's only by having people around and by showing them what exactly we are doing that people can talk about it and tell true stories. That's our main goal. We try to be as no nonsense as possible, and do what we say and say what we do, and that's what we believe in, and that's I think the best way forward. And that's the reason why I think we have sold our teas to some of the specialty buyers out there.
I wasn't surprised by that question, because for me, your whole story is so inspirational. I'm sure the people who have been with us this evening have all felt that. Just one other question that a number of people have mentioned, the one I'm going to read out is from Mackenzie Bailey. Can you explain the limitations of direct farm trade, both from the supplier and buyer sides?
One of the big challenges, well, some of the challenges we've had are, from coming from where we're based. We've got limited technology, so communication can be quite difficult. The biggest hurdle is really the cost of getting a product to market in the specialty sort of volumes. The whole infrastructure here in Malawi is set up to send out container loads of produce, whether it be tea, sugar, tobacco, and trying to send a 3-kilo box of tea. Most of the time, the freight costs a lot more than the tea. So that's really getting the logistics worked out is a big hurdle. Walter, on the markets, have you got any comments?
Yeah, that it's always the direct trade is always like, do you cut out the middleman? And for us, in the beginning, we wanted to cut out the middleman because that's where the opportunities are. But you need the middleman in one way or another. So we have over the last 8-9 years, we have fine-tuned also our definition of direct trade slightly. Direct trade for us means building sustainable relations with our customers, with our partners, so that they can also invest, for example, in schooling or bursaries or at origin. That they also give us the support that we have the confidence to start producing and to ship it to Europe and to invest in all that. So I think the middlemen are also there to give us a wider reach. I mean, the European office is small. It's basically just me sitting in a small office in Boeghout, close to Antwerp, with a little warehouse close to Antwerp. So it's not a massive operation, but so we need partners to help us to get it out there and to distribute. And we are there to support these buyers and these partners and these middlemen to tell the story and to show them the pictures and to bring them to origin and to make content for their end consumers. That's what we want to facilitate. And that's how we see the direct trade. But it is not cheap, and it took us
Sorry, what I think just the few other challenges as a producer when we talk about direct trade is the focus, we're very much focused on production, and that one of the challenges is really to keep a focus on, when you talk about direct trade, there's a lot of communication required and a lot of interaction. And I think there can be a risk that the producer doesn't give that enough attention. I know certainly I'm at fault of that quite a lot, and that's where Walter really comes in. But it's difficult for us to keep focused on that sometimes when we're dealing with all sorts of different challenges. One can quickly forget about the market, and you're just keeping focused on the product.
Yeah. No, indeed, to completely identify and understand that. We have so many questions to go through. I do realize the hour is up, but we're gonna continue a little bit more if everyone's okay with that. I'm gonna try and get through some of the questions. Mohammed has asked, hello, I'd like to know if you have any competitors and who are the key players of tea in Malawi?
Yeah, the biggest company in Malawi is tea company is Eastern Produce. It's part of the Camellia Group. And yeah, I mean there are obviously quite a few tea operators in Malawi. There's one can find them, I think, on there's the Tea Association of Malawi website, and I think members should be listed there.
But we are, Satemwa is the only one producing orthodox. So in Malawi, there is no other producer doing orthodox teas.
Orthodox tea. And Mohammed also asks, the other crops grown, this is the herbs, isn't it? Other crops such as the herbs that you mentioned, like hibiscus and lemon verbena, are those among
yeah, so we're grown
for export in Malawi?
Yeah, hibiscus is becoming more and more widely grown. I think of the herbs, that's probably the most common one. Yeah, the others like lemon verbena, I think, yeah, I don't think there's anyone else growing it at this point.
Okay. I have a question from Ian Gibbs. How do you see the local Malawi and African market developing?
Yeah, I think that's, it's obviously very important that it does develop, particularly given the oversupply situation that the tea industry is facing. There's a lot of interest from the middle class market in Malawi for green tea, where it's perceived as a health product, and we've seen a lot of interest for it, and a general awareness. People are generally quite aware that, well, the perception is there that it's drunk for health. It's actually something that's picked up with the COVID challenge. But black tea, the traditional sort of black tea that's drunk around, the market doesn't really seem to be growing much in Malawi. I think it might have been seen a bit of an old-fashioned drink, a little bit. I think there is obviously a lot of opportunity, but I think a lot of work needs to be done to try and educate, like everywhere, really. Yeah.
Yeah.
There is definitely room and potential to stimulate the South-South trade as well. So we have our own retail ready Satemwa tea brand, tea bags and loose tea in Malawi, and we shipped, or we were selling in Zambia before. a little bit in South Africa. So we are definitely working on that, and there is definitely scope and potential there. But indeed, it needs a lot of work and effort, and yeah, people on the ground doing it. Yeah.
Indeed. I have a question by Linda Gaylord. Do you have a mix of seed-grown plants and plants grown from cuttings? And in your terroir, is one better than other in drought situations? It's quite an interesting question.
Oops, there's one of our parkats. If I appear a bit ghostly, there we go. Yeah, so we do have, of course, most of our old fields are all seed, and they're mainly, so there's what we call the China type, and when I answered the question earlier, I forgot one of the reasons that China type is so productive is it reseeds itself. So it produces seed every year, and some of that seed germinates. So it keeps the field the population of the field is always very high because it's continually rejuvenating itself. And then we also have what we call Indian seed types. It's mainly more of a Cambod type, but we tend not to mix seed and cuttings. But it does occur occasionally, but not. We generally don't plan to do that. And the other kind of seed we get are like polyclonal, where we've got two known parents, and we cross them and then collect the seed from that. In terms of the drought tolerance, yeah, I think that as a generality, seed is more tolerant, but there are some varieties which are handling the droughts very well, and which are from cuttings, and some which are actually dying. We actually got some varieties are now starting to fail, which were sort of productive 20, 30 years ago, and now are failing.
Okay.
But yeah, it's and some seed is better than others as well. Of course, some seed takes the drought better. So, for example, that China type seed handles the droughts much better. And there are different responses to drought. So some of the the cultivars produced from cuttings, so some of the response may be to one of the particularly successful ones. It just loses all its leaves in a particularly dry situation, so it stops moisture loss. When we get the first rains, it comes back amazingly fast. And others have more upright leaf types. They stay cooler during the hot, dry summer days. So yeah, there's not a sort of general one size fits all answer to that.
Fantastic. I have a question from Ross McDonald. In some countries, labor, especially young labor, is leaving tea estates in favor of urban areas. Is this a problem in Malawi, and particularly considering the labor-intensive orthodox manufacture of specialty tea? It's also a very interesting question.
I think that, yeah, the trend is there, Ross. We don't struggle for labor at the moment. We do notice that there are fewer young guys coming into the industry. What the guys tend to prefer to do is something a bit more mechanized. Like we now prune all with mechanical saws, and always have sort of younger men like doing that job. I think one of the characteristics of the industry here, it's always been very male dominated. different from in Asia. So all generally plucking has always been done by men, and it's basically all jobs. And now we're finding more and more women coming in, again, in all, right throughout. So all different types of jobs, artisans, plucking, entering the workforce. So that's encouraging to see. But yeah, I think men tend to prefer to drift into towns or travel away for work. It is a characteristic that is there.
Okay. I have a question about the soil from Daphne. She says, would you please specify on the types of soil on your land and in Malawi, and whether this differs from Kenyan soils?
Okay, first of all, I don't know too much about Kenyan soils. I've obviously been a couple of times and spent a good amount of time looking at tea bushes and exploring factories, but yeah. So our soils are similar to Kenyan soils. They're old soils and quite heavily weathered. Older soils with relatively low pH. They're around 5. And then if a lot of fertilizer has been used in the past, they can get as low as 4, so, or even a bit lower. I've heard of some figures. So they tend to have they're sort of reddish soils, reasonably high clay content. The soil in Cholo and Malandi, which are the 2 main tea growing areas, they differ quite a bit. Malandi's most of the tea is more grown on the plain below the mountain. They're very free draining soils, very deep soils, very, very good rich soils. In Cholo, the soils tend to be, as you can see in this photo here, they're more sort of upland soils. Particular area has the soils are almost orthic, so they have a very rich and deep humic layer. The soils further down tend to be quite stony and not particularly good.
Okay, thank you for that. Okay, I have a question from JT. Do you know how much Rwandan Tea and Coffee Board is doing quality control and export promotion? It seems that Rwandan teas do very well in East African competitions. Are there any lessons to learn, and is the government of Malawi helping you in your efforts?
Yeah, I think Rwanda's done really well. I know they've got a great country strategy, and they seem to be implementing it well. There's obviously they've got some fantastic teas there. Malawi can do a lot better for sure. The Growers Association has always really been focused on production orientated issues and research, and that's where we've all the research in Malawi is completely privately funded from growers, and really that's where we've put our money, and we haven't put it into marketing, and it's a big gap. There's a lot to be done. We're not doing much about it as an industry. Lots of lessons to learn from Rwanda, Sri Lanka, definitely.
Okay, I think I'll go through the last few questions. This one is from Nigel. He says, since you saw the light and started on specialty tea, have any other local CTC companies added specialty to their production portfolio? I think, Walter, you said you're the only ones, right, that do specialty at the moment, which is a huge USP.
Yeah.
Yeah, so not yet. I think one of the, one of the characteristics, we're a lot smaller than most of our neighbors. So that's given us, a lot of flexibility, and also is more of a driver because we need to diversify out of the commodities. A lot of the other farms are obviously feeling the same economic pinch, but in the Cholo area, it's very good for macadamia nuts. So what a lot of people are doing are diversifying out of tea. So we've chosen, not to do that. We're kind of diversifying in tea, as it were.
Yes. Okay, the second last question I have to ask you from Cordula. Did the tea plants or the seeds from the tea plants that your grandfather cultivated originate from China? Is that correct?
Well, yes and no. I mean, those seeds came from the Edinburgh Botanical Gardens originally. I understand the Scottish missionaries brought them. So and I doubt they were China type, so they would have come from India to Edinburgh, and there may have been some crossbreeding, prior to them getting to us. In that China character, very small leaf. They don't like cold weather. They are light, liquoring, aromatic. So they retain that kind of characteristic. But no, the seed didn't come straight from China, no, in those days.
Mm-hmm. That's also very interesting. Okay.
It's a convoluted story. Yeah.
I'm sure. Last but not least, the question from John Snell. Is measuring your carbon footprint anything you are looking at?
No, but it's the sort of thing we're very interested in. We're very, biodiversity, our carbon footprint, the environment is all very important to us. We really feel climate change is such a real thing to us, and we really kind of dealing with it all the time in a way. And so it is something that we'd like to know more about. There's very limited access to the kind of knowledge and tools in our area that something like that would demand. So, but if he's got any ideas, we're interested.
Yeah, so John, feel free to contact Alex if you do can offer any suggestions. Now, I'd like to end with a comment from our president, Nigel Milligan. Firstly, guys, this has been absolutely wonderful. And he says, Alex and Walter, so glad you mentioned potential for high-value CTCs, a much neglected opportunity in the industry. And I think, I'm so sorry, everyone, if I didn't get to some of the questions, but please do post them to us and we will make sure Alex and Walter answers your questions. I know some questions have been answered by Walter as well during this, so we're trying to manage the questions as best we can because this has been an absolutely interesting topic. And really, thank you so much, both of you, for your time and effort in putting this together. Now, what I wanted to say is the European Specialty Association exists to raise standards of tea everywhere. And we do this by embracing innovation, share knowledge like what we're doing today, and encourage collaborations. We will be running more webinars every month. And if you would like to be kept in the loop, please visit our website and sign up to our newsletter. Now, the next one is on December the 9th. Have I got that correct, David? December the 9th. Thank you. And Lucy Chappell, she's the founder of the London School of Tea, and she'll be talking also about specialty tea, but from a consumer's perspective. And so she'll be sharing a lot of insights, and be sure to join us next month. So please do sign up. I'd like to thank everybody for participating, for staying this late if you're in our part of the world. And please be sure that this has been captured, and we will send you the recording in case you miss out on any bits. But I'd just like to say thank you very much for your time, staying with us, and also participating in this very interesting conversation, because you two are passionate about specialty tea. So for today, I'd like to say thank you to the speakers. Good night, good morning, or good afternoon, wherever you are in the world, to everyone. Take care and stay safe. Bye, everybody.
Bye-bye.
Bye.